little joke, because I made it float. So we hope that this will also be another addition to taking experimental gameplay concepts and getting them introduced into the commercial environment. A game that's just coming out of our department right now, this is a thesis project from this year, The Misadventures of P.B. Winterbottom, is a sort of comedic game in which you play a silent film hero who will do anything in his quest for pie. He will, including breaking the space-time continuum. So he records himself in time, and he can use clones of himself to solve puzzles to get the pie. So it's a very humorous game, and the game will actually, I can't say now, but it's within the next few weeks it should be announced that it will be coming, it will be commercially published. So I want to pause in my examples for just 1 minute and talk about how games make meaning. Because to me this is the essence of experimentation. At the center of any game is what's called the core mechanic, right? As this is a quote from Katie Salen and Eric Zimmern's Rules of Play, talking about how it's the essential nugget of game activity, that thing that the players do over and over again, in which they make meaningful choices and have a meaningful play experience. It represents the moment-to-moment activity of the players, and it's often referred to as the verbs of gameplay. So what the player is actually doing. For example, these are some examples of the expressive acts that players typically take in games, the verbs of gameplay. And you can see that you'll recognize these from games that you've played. A very early game designer, Warren Robinette, who designed the graphic version of Adventure on the Atari, pointed out that every single verb in the dictionary is a potential for a game. Really, it sort of points to an idea for simulation. So his question, and I think it's actually a really good one, even though he asked it quite a long time ago, I think it's still pertinent today, is why do games seem to focus on such a limited range of verbs? Why do we just focus on particular verbs centered around combat, for example? So Katie Salen and Eric Zimmern attempt to answer this question, and I think, again, quite rightly, they point out that one of the reasons that we don't expand our vocabulary of verbs is that it is a truly tough design problem. So if we want to design, for example, a simulation of social conflict or psychological conflict, we have to radically simplify and stylize that interaction. And combat is, in many ways, easily simplified, or at least it has been for so long that we now understand it in its simplified version. I mean, to be honest, if you really went to fight someone, there's a lot more going on than a simple combat algorithm allows for psychologically. But nevertheless, we understand the gestures of combat as they have been brought down to us from simple strategy games to the complex simulations we have today. So in order to do this experimentation, this innovation that I'm talking about in all of these games I've showed you so far, we need to radically stylize the interactions that we're looking to talk about. So I want to spend a little bit more time on a game that I've been working on recently called The Night Journey. And The Night Journey is an art game. It's a game being made in collaboration with a media artist named Bill Viola. And you may or may not have heard of his work, but he is one of the earliest video artists, and he also has done installation work. And much of his work deals with the sense of the spiritual journey. And so when we set out to do the Night Journey project, this game, the design goal for the project was to evoke through the gameplay a sense of this journey of enlightenment through the actual core mechanics of the game. So it's an almost impertinent question, right? I mean, it could be considered, by some to be a territory that one shouldn't address in gameplay. But as I said at the beginning, in my lab, we feel our job is to really push the boundaries and to ask the kind of questions that people aren't asking. So it seemed like a perfect question for us. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Bill Viola's work, I want to show a few still images so that you could get a sense of the kind of beautiful imagery. This is Bill himself. And these are just some of the iconic images from his pieces. And this is a quote from a critic who said, and I think really nicely articulated, that Bill's work can be considered the pursuit of enlightenment through attention to transcendent experience. So Bill actually began working on ideas for the Night Journey before he came to work with us at the Game Innovation Lab. And he had begun with the notion that he would make a game, a sort of Myst-like game, for those of you who played the old adventure game, that had content reflecting the various sources and texts of spirituality, a sort of illuminated manuscript in a digital form. And when myself and my team came onto the project, we really wanted to address the gameplay and get to the core of the gameplay. And so we asked this question: what is the mechanic of enlightenment? What is it that one does as a person journeying through the world that makes one open to this sense of enlightenment? So it's, again, as I pointed out in the quote from Rules of Play, to sort of radically simplify and stylize this experience is a difficult thing, possibly, can't be done, but it's what we set out to do. And I should mention, this is Bill and I playing an early board game of the project. And my process revolves very strongly around what I call a play-centric process. And in this play-centric process, we begin modeling the mechanic on paper. Before we ever do anything digitally, we build card games or levels on just board games, and essentially try to abstract the ideas before we invest anything in the technology. So over the course of time, the game evolved, of course, from a board game into a digital experience. And this is actually a still frame from the piece. And some of the core mechanics that we settled on, some are traditional. So this is a very traditional adventure game or role-playing game mechanic. It's in many games, the notion of exploration. But in our game, our goal was to slow the player down. So you aren't trying to race from region to region to sort of get credit for it. The other thing that we did is we wanted to make an environment that was visually complex, so that when we slowed you down, there was much to find, much to sort of look at and admire. I'll talk about the visual style in a little while. We wanted to give you rewards for looking deeply at things. So these were all important design goals for us. It's another frame from the piece. We also wanted to include at the